Hey there folks, just out today, just wanted to do a quick video and talk about whether the Dr650 is any good. So if you're interested in the Dr650, thinking about getting one, or you just want to know my opinion on it, stick around and I'll let you know. So the Dr650, is it any good? Well, this model of Dr650 has remained virtually unchanged since 1996, so that tells you a lot about the motorcycle. There has been a few changes over the years. 2003, the base gasket was changed from paper to metal. They were prone to leaking out of there, so they changed that from a paper gasket to a metal gasket. So if you've got a 96 to 2003, it'd be worth having a look down there, see if you've got the paper gasket still, and keep an eye for leaks down there. Around about 2005, 2006, they changed the third gear as they were prone for exploding. Even though they changed and updated this gear, they are still prone to that nowadays, so that's something to watch out for. Around about 2013-14, they put a countershaft seal retainer. The countershaft seal was known for popping out and blowing all your oil out of it. So if you've got a 2013-14 or less, check and see if you've got a countershaft seal retainer. You can see that just by taking the front sprocket cover off and having a wee look in there. You can buy them from Suzuki, they're real cheap if you've not got one. 2017, roughly onwards, they started Loctiting the NSU screws. Now, if you've got a bike before that, it's highly recommended that you remove the clutch cover here, remove the clutch basket, and Loctite those NSU screws in, the neutral sending unit. Now, if you're riding along and you see a neutral light flicking or not coming on sometimes, it's highly advise you just to stop the motorcycle right away and get that checked out, because those bolts can fall out and work their way into the engine. Now, apart from that, this bike has remained basically unchanged since '96, like I said, apart from a few colour changes here and there. One of the really good things about the Dr650 is the versatility. There is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different modifications that you can do to this bike to change it, make it exactly how you like it. Because it's been out for so long, there's just the options are endless out there. You can turn it into a super motard. This is sort of like an adventure setup I've got here. I've got the big tank on there, the screen. The options are pretty much endless. They're relatively cheap to buy new. At the moment in New Zealand, they're sitting at $8,200 plus on-roads, which is surprisingly cheap. Generally, they were kicking around about 10 grand last year for a brand new one, so they have dropped in price, obviously with what's happening at the moment. So that's real cheap for a brand new 650cc adventure bike. Second hand, you can pick them up fairly cheap as well, generally with all the modifications on them. I bought mine over a year and a half ago now for 8 grand, with basically what you see on there now. Service intervals, Suzuki recommends service intervals every 6,000 kilometres. So that's an oil change at 6,000, and every 12 you do valve clearances and oil and filter. Brake fluid every 2 years. That's pretty much it, which is actually pretty decent service intervals for a dual sport motorcycle. I do mine a wee bit less at 5,000 k intervals, and I do the oil and filter every time, and I do the valves at 10. I may change that up a wee bit as I have had some issues with the bike, although I don't think that's oil related. As I said earlier, they were prone to third gear issues. They still are prone to third gear issues. I don't think so much exploding anymore, but if you watch one of my videos recently, I talked about I drained the oil on this bike and a piece of circlip fell out. Now that was off third gear. That was actually fairly common on the 2015 onwards Dr650s. Whether it was a run of bad casting on the circlips that caused this, I'm unsure. So I recently had a full engine strip on this bike and replaced that circlip and rebuilt it. So I've pretty much had every single part of this bike apart, and really apart from that third gear thing, there's not a lot that goes wrong with them. It's worth, if you're doing, if you just bought a bike, it's worth stripping the head bearings and the linkage bearings and giving them a wee grease, because they're pretty stingy on the grease from factory, as all manufacturers are. I did that recently on mine. Also the swing arm bearings as well. One thing to keep an eye on is your rear sprocket carrier bearing. Just give that a wiggle. See, there's a tiny bit of movement there, that's okay. But if you get a fair bit, say 5-6 mm movement there, probably even less than that actually, it's worth changing that bearing. Now, I just recently changed mine at 17,000 Ks and it was completely shot. You want to keep an eye on that. They are prone for those bearings going. It is quite a poor design, and if it does fail with you on the road, you can lock the back wheel because the sprocket carrier will kick over and could potentially cause a fairly nasty accident. So that is one thing you need to keep an eye on. So what's the Dr650 like on the road? Well, this is one area where I was quite worried about before I bought this one. I had GS's before this, and I've had sports bikes in the past, and I thought a 650 single cylinder around about 35-40 horsepower, I thought that's not going to be enough for me. I thought it's going to be slow as anything, I'm just going to hate it. But I was actually very surprised my first time out on it. It gets up and goes pretty quickly. Now, I've got one tooth lower on the front, but even with the standard gearing, it gets up to 100k, no problems at all. And it's still got bags of power there to overtake. Granted, you can't overtake as quick as you could on obviously a bigger bike, but it's still easily possible on this bike. It'll sit at 100k all day. I generally don't go much quicker than that, although it can sit at 120 without much issues, but you do notice a drop in fuel consumption, so I tend to stick around 100k mark, which is the speed limit here in New Zealand, and it'll sit there all day long. I did the TT2000 not too long ago, of course that's 2000 mostly on-road Ks, and I had no complaints with this bike. We did a tour of the South Island last year, me and Danny, on 2 Dr650s, and that was 2000, just over 2000 Ks solely on the road. I have no complaints whatsoever. Even with the standard wheels on it, the 2117, it handles fine on the road. Even when you get to the twisty stuff, it's actually surprisingly good. General riding, depends what you want to do. I just ride Dual Sport Adventure, and touring is really what I do. I do attempt some harder tracks every now and again, but generally fairly easy stuff. And I have no complaints with this bike. It handles shingle roads like this, it handles proper mud, dirt, water crossings. It's a general good all-round motorcycle. You can do 2-up on a Dr650 as well. I've done this before when we went around the South Island. We did a short 20-30 Ks or 2-up, me and Danny on the bike.
Oh my god. This is not good. Like, the DR is not happy right now.
Although I would definitely not recommend it if you're looking for a 2-up bike. Look elsewhere. Although the seat, there is enough room in the seat, it's just not comfortable. I had a wee box on the back here and there was just no room whatsoever. With that in the tank bag, it wasn't fun. She had okay power for 2-up. Well, nah, she didn't actually. She'd struggled. Yeah, if you're looking for a 2-up bike, get something else. Something else that's good on the Dr650, they're easy to lower. Now, I'm 5'6", so I'm quite a short guy. I've got a 30-inch inseam. My bike's standard height. When I bought it, it was lowered. It wasn't lowered correctly, but it was lowered. I'll show you me sitting on it. I can touch the ground fairly easy. Tiptoes on both sides, almost flat foot actually. I have no problems touching the ground. Now bear in mind, my suspension is standard and it's done 17,000 miles. So my suspension is probably a bit tired, but I think even if I fitted an upgraded shock on there, I don't think I'd have an issue touching the ground. Danny's 5'2" and we did lower it for her. You've seen that in my video. It's fairly easy to do, and she had a lower seat on there as well. With that you fit a lower side stand, which you get from Suzuki. So folks, that's me pretty much told you everything about the Dr650. If you've got one, let me know in the comments if I have missed anything or got anything wrong. Overall, I'm very happy with this bike. If you can only have one motorcycle in the world, this is a pretty good option. It pretty much does everything fairly well. It's not the lightest bike. It weighs about 165 kilograms, but compared to a lot of other dual sport and adventure bikes, it's not too bad actually. And like I said, the power output is it's more than adequate for general adventure riding. Yeah, so overall I can't really complain about it. Hopefully I don't have any more third gear circlip issues, because if I do, I will be fairly pissed off, to be honest. But apart from that, yeah, awesome bike. So anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.